applause going for Pete Van Kirk, please?
I fell into a ring of fire. I fell into
Who's ready to light it up?
a ring of fire. I went down, down,
3,
and
2,
the flames
1.
went higher, and it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire, the ring of fire.
This is just, I mean, we've got, between all those folks, we've got a world-class crew right here in Perry, and I think we should all be very, very thankful for that. So let's give them a round of applause as well. And last but not least, John Brommel, the artist. I think he has some things to say. So we'll bring him up here.
Thank you, and wait until it gets dark. How many people have seen this while we were practicing the lighting? Very many? Oh, a lot more to be surprised. When Jenny and Mary Rose came to talk to me and told me the story of Pete Van Kirk and what kind of a guy he was, what he did for this community, they said they wanted a piece that would somehow illustrate how much love and care he poured into the town of Perry. And the idea that he poured cast iron his whole life, made a crucible and a stream of metal. Put the mic up, how's that? Okay. How far do I need to back up? So the idea of illustrating the love and care that Pete Van Kirk poured into this community, the crucible and the stream of metal seemed the only likely outcome. This took about 4.5 or 5 months to complete. Mike Lambert, a good friend of mine and lighting engineer, standing right there, engineered this lighting, and it's miraculous what LED colored lights do to buffed aluminum. I guess that's all I have.
Thank you, John. And you know, John was first brought to Perry. I was told this story earlier tonight. His first visit to Perry was our very first Art on the Prairie, which amazingly was 2010. So we're getting set for our 7th annual Art on the Prairie coming up later this November. And this is one of the neat things about how we are seeing art grow in the city of Perry. We present these events, we have these events which are not just locally known, but now becoming known at the state level, at the national level, and you see the talent that it draws, such as John. So it's really neat to see everything get connected through the different events that we're hosting here in Perry. Mike Lambert, who we're going to see his magic in just a few moments once it gets dark. Mike is known all throughout the country, all throughout the world for his lighting projects. He is a lighting engineer with KCL Engineering Company. He has worked at various theme parks in Texas. He has produced some lighting projects at Yankee Stadium, I understand, in his career. Also the Knott's Berry Farm amusement parks on the West Coast. So he has been at some of the biggest venues, and here he is in Perry, Iowa, about to unveil his lighting. So let's give a big Perry welcome to Mr. Mike Lambert.
Thank you, everyone. It really is a privilege and a pleasure to be here this evening. And Jenny asked me to mention a few of the projects. We've done them in China, Hawaii, Las Vegas, around the world. But in all seriousness, I've been working with John for about 12 years. I would give all of that up if I could only do John Brommel's sculptures. This really is a remarkable piece. It's the highlight of my career is working with John on his pieces. We've done multiple ones together. And really, I'd like to thank you all for such a show of support and what is going to end up being really a world-class sculpture garden. And so I'd really like to turn this mic over to someone else who's a little more accustomed to speaking in large crowds. And thanks again.
If we could have the Van Kirk family start to make their way up to the stage. as the Van Kirks make their way up, I know I can speak on the years that I've been in Perry since I first arrived in 1997, and one of the first family names that I remember the ownership of the radio station telling me about was this group right here with Pete and Joyce and Kirk and Derek. I see Jackson, DeLynn, the Van Kirk family, and what Progressive Foundry has meant to this community throughout the years. And you look at the location of this statue, how appropriate it is as we see the Progressive Foundry steel right in the center of our hometown. We look to the left, we have the Van Kirk Career Academy. You look to the right, where all the magic is worked at, the actual Progressive Foundry. I was told for many years, Pete always parked his golf cart right down that street on the backside of Progressive Foundry. So what I think suiting location to have this statue in the center, the epicenter, if you will, sandwiched between what Progressive Foundry has done. This family, this industry has done so much for Perry, not just the Van Kirk Career Academy, but we have Progressive Fields out at the high school, which is the current site for both Perry baseball and Perry softball. And then we found out just a couple of weeks ago that groundbreaking will take place at the brand new entrance to Dewey Field, which is the high school football field, thanks to the generosity of this family here behind me. So let's start the night with our loudest ovation for everything that the Van Kirks have done in Progressive Foundry. We have Joyce, DeLynn, Derek, Jackson, and Kirk here, and I think Joyce has some words you want to say tonight.
I do have a few words to say. I've been thinking about this all afternoon. I'm Pete's wife, and I think you could describe Pete as the nicest, most uncommonly common person you could hope to meet. Never dressed up very much, particularly, didn't want to. And he was just a common person. And I was thinking today how humbled Pete would be to be here with us tonight, but I don't know. I'm gonna think he knows something. Speaking of humbled, a little about Pete's life. In his early years, he was born in Oregon, and he and his dad moved around the country, just the two of them, the rest of his years up through high school. And they lived in lots of places, many times above a storefront in a little two-room apartment. And part of the time they lived with relatives and Pete's dad was a farmhand, and then his dad for many years was a road maintainer, and it was kind of a love affair. They both loved each other totally. When Pete came to Perry, I always loved hearing him talk about the foundry and those early years, and I know how hard he worked. And when I think of the foundry and when he bought the foundry here, he had been previously working as a foreman. Another company owned it, and he was a foreman. But the company wanted to spin it off because it probably wasn't a big moneymaker at that time, and they wanted to spin off some of their assets. So I picture that as a freight train that Pete bought. A big freight train sitting on the tracks, 50 cars behind it, and that thing was standing still and he had to make it move. And that's what he did. He worked hard. Weekends he would go somewhere and buy used equipment in a foundry where the electricity was shut off and all he had was a flashlight in a dark, dank, dirty foundry trying to disassemble some piece of equipment that he could save some money on and buy it because he didn't have extra money. So he worked hard all of those years. I think anyone in business knows that it's a struggle when you start something. But as the years went by, that freight train began to move, and it picked up a little speed along the way. During that time, he had mentors, and he used to tell me about some of them. Maybe it was an attorney, or I believe it was an engineer in Boone that he loved a lot, and the guy must have liked Pete because he gave him advice. Might have been a banker that gave him advice. All kinds of people in his life that he admired gave him advice and kind of took him under their wing. And he really appreciated that. He just soaked in all of that information, and he was hungry to learn, and he wanted to be a success. So, time went by, and the freight train kept picking up a little speed. Things got a little better, but it took a lot of years, and it was hard. When I asked him when we built our house, I said, Pete, what do you want to have put on the wall? Something that you always think. What saying do you want? And he said, consistency and persistence always win. Consistency and persistence always win. And I think he just knew that he would not quit. He was a determined person. He didn't know the meaning of failure. As a little side note, I asked Pete one night, we were talking about his boys, and I said, okay, well, what's the difference between Derek Van Kirk and Kirk Van Kirk? What do you think? And he said, well, I would choose Derek to fight a war, and I would choose I would choose Derek to plan the war, and I would choose Kirk to charge. So I think there's some truth in that. They're both wonderful in their positions, and it's very well suited to each of them. One last note. On Pete's birthday this year, July 15th, I decided I hadn't been to the foundry for a long time, and I decided maybe I would go in and see how things had changed. And it so happened that Kirk was in that morning, and he was happy to see me, and we both talked about his dad, and so Kirk gave me a tour of the inside of the foundry, and it's changed quite a bit. I was pretty impressed. But Kirk told me, I believe it was Kirk, maybe it was Derek, just in conversation, they said, let me preface this by saying, Pete was always interested in the daily production record and the scrap report. Even when he was in the hospital for surgeries, seemed like one of them always delivered those reports to Pete. He didn't always read them, but he looked at the bottom line, and it was either an up or a down. So one of them, I think maybe it was Kirk or Derek, I don't know, said, we were standing in Pete's office, and I said, oh gosh, it's just the way it was. It's so neat, so tidy. Anyway, Derek still delivers those production and scrap reports to his dad's desk every day. And with that, I just kind of lost it. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Joyce. You know, Dad would be he would be ecstatic about tonight. Dad would be very grateful about the whole situation, and like Joyce said earlier, he'd be humbled. Can you hear me now? But Dad wouldn't let you know that. If we would have been constructing this in Dad's lifetime, I can hear the questions he would have asked Derek and I. So how much is that damn thing going to cost? And is the city going to charge us electrical rate for that? Because I'm not going to pay it. This isn't my idea. And you folks that knew Dad knew that was his personality. He always played things down. But community, God, I got 400 people staring at me. Community was a big part of Dad's life. And he instilled that in us. We were fortunate enough to live and grow up in Perry. Derek and I and Jackson and the Van Kirk family. And this community has given us, we feel very fortunate that we got to grow up in Perry, Iowa, and get to know everybody that's out there right now on a personal basis. A lot of people don't get to get that. So when we look at community, we look at it as a group effort, and Derek and I talk about this a lot. You know, what the community has given us, we'd like to give a portion of that back. And we instill that into our business, that we work hard and we like to see the community flourish. And if Dad was up here today, he would give credit not to himself. He would downplay that. I think Dad would give most of his credit to the employees of Progressive Foundry first and foremost, past and present. But Dad would speak highly of this community. And I know Dad would beam when Derek and I and him would get talking in the conference room about community projects, about the high school football team, about anything to do with community and people. Dad was all over it, and he would really just beam and get excited about things like that. And Dad, you know, we try to keep a low profile in this because that's not our intention. Dad felt proud in the aspect that not because he did it, because he could do it. And that made a lot of sense to Derek and I and Delynn and the Van Kirk family. So, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'll keep talking. Jackson said it best. We were coming back from Chicago last week, and he summarized kind of how I think we all feel at times. Jack said, you know, Uncle Kirk, I feel really blessed. He says, I feel blessed because I got to grow up in Perry. He says, I got a great family. And he says, I got a lot of opportunity. You know, and Jared Jackson at 22 years old, and he kind of summarized pretty much all my life. I feel very blessed that I got to grow up here in Perry. And I had a great family, and we've had great opportunity. So, with that being said, I'd like to ask Jackson to lead us in prayer.
Thanks, Uncle Kirk. Let's all bow our heads, please, and pray real quick. Dear Lord, thank you so much for the opportunity to come together tonight as one community. It's truly a beautiful thing when a group of people get together for something like this, all for a good cause. Thank you for blessing food to our bodies tonight, and thank you for all the people who have put this together, for delivering them to us. Lord, thank you so much for Pete Van Kirk and for all that he's done for this community. Let this sculpture be just a fantastic memory for him. And remember all the things that he's done and all the things that he's taught us. Lord, help this community as well as the industries within the town of Perry, Iowa, to continue into the future and thrive. Thank you for everything you've given us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Wow. Hard act to follow there, isn't it? I'm going to talk more about the statue, though, because wow. Isn't it neat? And what a neat deal for Perry and our boulevard to have it right here. It's a neat deal for industry in Perry, and that's who it's dedicated to. And my dad's name's attached to it, and we're very happy for that. It's a neat deal for Progressive Foundry and our employees, and it really is. And I had the guy that operates the ladle down to the foundry up here and took his picture right by it, and they were already making a joke that if he dies, they're going to put a statue of him right beside it, actually operating it. So we were giving him a bad time. But what this is John Brommel and Mike Lambert and Jenny Hecklin had come last January, last winter anyway, and they told us what their intentions were. They wanted to make a piece of art out of our molten iron, and we call this a bull ladle. And that's just what it is. It's a ladle. And so we took them on a tour, Kirk and I, and showed them what molten iron looks like at 2,800 degrees, okay? And coming out of a ladle. Now, there isn't that much coming out of the ladle, I'll tell you that. But it looks neat, doesn't it? And I think once we see have the lights on here, it's really going to look swell. I don't know how else to say it. Awesome. So they took pictures and took it back, and Kirk and I kind of had a short conversation. Like, I wonder how they're going to make art out of a bull ladle, because if you're down at the foundry, it's hard work, you know, and our employees out there know. So, but I think they nailed it, and we don't even have the lights on yet. So I'm looking very forward to seeing it with the lights on. I've cheated already because I saw a picture of it, and it looks awesome. Jenny and Art of the Prairie, thank you very much for this neat deal, and there's so many other people we need to thank. I think a lot of it's been covered, but thank you all, and thank you to the town of Perry. Appreciate it.
Thank you from the Vankirk family.
Well, the moment of truth is here. We are going to have Jackson flip the switch to officially unveil our streetscape. Now, I'm not sure if Jackson requested this song as we get everybody and all the parts in place. But as we get set to light up the center of Perry, everybody on a night that we have deemed Born of Fire, we introduce the Ring of Fire here with the Progressive Foundry, and Jackson getting set to do it tonight.
Can we get some applause going for Pete Vankirk, please?
I fell into a ring of fire.
Who's ready to light it up?
I went down,
3, 2, 1.
and it burns from the ring of fire, the ring of fire. fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. The taste of love is sweet when hearts like ours meet. I fell for you like a child. Oh, but the fire went wild. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire.
Yeah, that's what we're about a semi. Yeah. We're not supposed to be going very fast down through here, so. Yeah. And it just ruined the whole thing if you tried to put a barrier up around it.
On behalf of the community in the city of Perry, thank you everybody for coming out to tonight's special night. A couple of dates to keep in mind. We want to remind you our second streetscape will be unveiled on November 11th, which will kick off the Art on the Prairie Festival, which will be the 7th annual Art on the Prairie. And this one will be with the art streetscape, Roberta Green Amundsen, and all the work that she has done with the Hotel Patee. So that's going to be happening on November 11th. Don't forget about the Art Harvest Tour coming up September 23rd and 24th, along with the Post Print Festival, which will be happening in December. Again, thank you for coming. A big thank you to the City of Perry, John Brummel, Mike Lambert, and all who donated to make this dream come true. To Pete Van Kirk for always putting family and community first in the Van Kirk family. Thank you, everybody.
Applause going for Pete Van Kirk, please.
I fell into a ring of fire. I fell
Who's ready to light it up?
into a ring of fire. I went down, down,
3, 2, 1.
higher, and it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire, the ring of fire. went higher, and it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire, the ring of fire. The taste of love is sweet when hearts like ours meet. I fell for you like a child. Oh, but the fire went wild. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire, the ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire, the ring of fire. And it burns, burns, burns. The ring of